Hey everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel Engaging English. I'm your coach Siddhi and today I'll be covering top 20 most commonly used figures of speech, also known as literary devices in English language. What are figures of speech? They are used in both literature and poetry to produce a heightened effect in enhancing a piece of writing. They communicate ideas that go beyond the words' usual and literal meanings. Understanding these figures of speech is very important as they form the very basis of good writing skills. Now let us see the most commonly used figures of speech based on comparison. The first one is simile. Simile is a comparison of two unlikely things where the attributes of one is transferred to another. In the given examples, the first one, you seem as happy as duck in a deluge. Second one, his mind was like a sword. When the two objects of a different kind which have one common characteristic are compared, such comparison is called simile. For example, in the second sentence, his mind is compared to that of the sharpness of the sword. But you have to also note here that such comparison is introduced with words such as like and as. The next figure of speech based on comparison is metaphor. Metaphor takes all the attributes of the object and applies them to the subject. It is an implied simile. It is an implied comparison without using words like and as. For example, the world is a stage. Life is a roller coaster ride. Here, metaphor makes abstract ideas such as life and the world clearer by associating it with concrete ideas such as stage and roller coaster ride. Life is a roller coaster ride means the life is full of ups and downs. But only thing you have to consider here is that metaphor does not make use of words such as like and as. The only difference between simile and metaphor is that simile says A is like B. For example, in the battle, he fought like a lion. And the metaphor says A is B. Example, he was a lion in the battle. The next figure of speech in the list is repetition. When a word or a phrase is repeated, it is called repetition. I think this is the simplest of all. For example, it's a mad, mad, mad word. I'm going far, far, far away. The words mad and far are repeated thrice. When a particular word is repeated more than once, it becomes a clear case of repetition. Moving on to our next figure of speech, alliteration. Alliteration is a series of words that begin with the same sound. For example, she sells seashells on the seashore. Health, happiness, hope for the new year. Good grief. You see, I've highlighted the initial sounds, the common initial sounds of the words present in the given sentences. For example, in the first sentence, the sound sh is repeated. In the second sentence, the sound her is repeated. And in the third phrase, the word g is repeated. Good grief. The only difference between repetition and alliteration is that in repetition, words are repeated, and in alliteration, sounds are repeated. The next figure of speech on the list is personification. It is an attribution of human characteristics given to inanimate objects, events, or sometimes abstract ideas. See the following examples. This is a happy house. When an abstract non-living thing, such as house, is spoken of as a living thing, giving it a human quality of happiness, it becomes a clear case of personification. The flowers smiled. Do you really think flowers can smile? Of course not. But here, flowers are personified. They are given human quality of smiling. The crowded bus crawled. Crawling is again an activity which only a human baby does. But here, bus is personified and hence it becomes a clear case of personification. Moving on to our next figure of speech, hyperbole. Hyperbole is nothing but extreme exaggeration. It makes things seem much bigger than they really are. For example, this box weighs a ton. I'm trying to solve a million issues these days. Really, you can handle 1 to maximum 10 issues at a time. Million issues? You see, it is exaggeration. It was faster than a cheetah. Basically, these sentences cannot be taken literally. This is just a statement or which is made to look emphatic. The next figure of speech is irony. It means using words where the meaning is the opposite of their usual meaning. It is a dry sense of humor where wit is appreciated but is unlikely to raise a laugh. For example, the child of cobbler has no shoe. Isn't it ironical? This is a contrast between what is expected and what actually happens. Gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room. Tell me one thing, if it is a war room, why fighting is prohibited? Isn't it ironical? So, such sentences become clear case of irony. Moving on to our next figure of speech, pun. Pun is basically play upon words, having two different possible meanings. First meaning is most obvious, while the second meaning is hidden. For example, is life worth living? It depends upon the liver. Now, the word liver here has two meanings. A, it is a major part of a body, it is an organ. And the secondly, the liver also means the person who lives. See the second sentence. Her cat is near the computer to keep an eye on the mouse. Now, here, mouse again has two meanings. The mouse, the animal mouse, and the other mouse is the computer mouse. So, such sentences which has dual meanings can be considered as clear case of pun. The next figure of speech is antithesis. Antithesis is using opposite words in the same sentence to highlight a point. For example, in many ways the old are young. How can old be young and young be old? You see, the old and young, the two opposite words, are used in the same sentence to highlight a point. See the next one. To err is human, to forgive divine. Man proposes, God disposes. Propose, dispose, opposite words put in the same sentence to highlight a particular point. These are the clear cases of antithesis. Moving on to our next figure of speech, that is oxymoron. Oxymoron, this puts two words together that seem to contradict each other to produce a sharp effect. For example, less is more. Silent yell. Yell is shouting. How can shouting be silent? But yet, these two contradictory qualities are put together to produce a sharp effect. See the next sentence. He was the wisest fool in our college. Wise and fool. Again, two contradictory qualities are predicted at once of the same thing. Moving on to our next figure of speech, paradox. Paradox completely contradicts itself in the same sentence. Impossible contradictions are presented. For example, a very popular quotation from George Orwell's popular book 1984. War is peace, ignorance is strength, freedom is slavery. How can war be peaceful? Ignorance cannot be strength, and slavery cannot be freedom at all. But yet, this particular statement, it appears to contradict itself, and hence it is a clear case of paradox. See the next sentence, death shall be no more, that thou shalt die. Now this is an old, written in old English. How can death die? It is a paradox. Though these things are not true, they represent an interesting paradox that makes a person think seriously about what they have just read or heard. So this was about the paradox. The next figure of speech is a little difficult to pronounce but very easy to spot. Onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia means creating a word that phonetically imitates, resembles, or suggests the sound that it describes. For example, sounds like meow, chirp, bang, growl, hiss, giggle, whack, vroom, etc. Bees busily buzz as they fly from flower to flower. So, buzzing is a sound. These are the words that imitate the sound or they echo some sort of sense. And when you find such words, in a piece of writing that clearly becomes case of onomatopoeia. The next figure of speech is euphemism. Euphemism is substitution of a harmless word for one that might offend. For example, he has fallen asleep. So to be more polite, instead of saying he is dead, we use euphemism fallen asleep. I really need a bit of peace, which means you go away, I need some peace. So using harmless word of phrases that might otherwise offend. She is pleasantly plump lady. That is the reference to her fat figure. So instead of saying fat, you say she is pleasantly plump lady. This was euphemism. The next figure of speech is transferred epithet. It is when an adjective used to describe one thing is transferred to another. An epithet is a word or phrase which describes the main quality of someone or something. See the first example. A boy passed a sleepless night. Here the adjective sleepless, which belongs to the boy, has been transferred to the night. See the second example. I saw a boy with eager eye. It is not the eye which is eager, but the boy is eager. The adjective eager, which belongs to the boy, is transferred to I. So such sentences can be said as a clear case of transferred epithet. Moving on to the next figure of speech, synecdoche. Synecdoche means a part is made to represent the whole or vice versa. A part can be represented for whole or whole can be represented as part. For example, see the first sentence, England lost by 6 wickets. Here the word England means English cricket team. The whole is represented for the part. All hands at work. All hands means the crew members. It is the reference to crew. Use of wheels to refer a car. We bought new wheels, which means here the part is represented for whole. So wheels is nothing but car. Moving on to the next figure of speech, and that is metonymy. Metonymy is a word replaced by something very close to the original meaning. For example, I'll just Google it. So instead of using search, you say, I'll just Google it. The pen is mightier than the sword. Pen represents words. Sword represents military power. So the next set of figures of speech are climax and anticlimax. So let's first see what climax is. Climax are words that are put in ascending order. For example, I came, I saw, I conquered. To infinity and beyond. If you think that's bad, it gets worse. Love creates happiness, happiness creates joy, and joy creates enlightenment. It is a series of words or phrases or sometimes clauses in order of increasing importance. On the other hand, anticlimax is just opposite of the climax. Anticlimax is also known as bathos. This is the opposite to climax, signifies the descent from higher to the low. A man so various that he seemed to be not one but all mankind's epitome, who in the course of one revolving moon was lawyer, statesman, fiddler, a buffoon. So this order is in decreasing importance. So that's about climax and anticlimax. Moving on to the second last figure of speech in the list, and that is apostrophe. Apostrophe is breaking off from the normal speech and speaking to an imaginary person or even to an abstract quality or idea. It is typically a question, an explanation, or an expression of frustration. For example, Heaven, tell me, why does he speak thus? Welcome, O life, O holy night. So basically, it is a speech or a phrase that is addressed to an imaginary person or for an abstract quality or an idea. The last figure of speech is assonance is the repetition of vowel sounds across words, particularly in the stressed syllables. Example, newly cut the U stuck quavering in the morning dew. You see the repetition of vowel sounds, new, you, dew. Okay, these are the stressed syllables. See the next example. How now brown cow. How now brown cow. These are the repeated vowel sounds in the stressed syllables. And the last one, the fat man would say that they can, but would they say that too? So say, can, fat. Okay, so these vowel sounds are repeated in the stressed syllables. Thank you so much for watching this video, and for more such videos, please subscribe to my YouTube channel Engaging English, and I shall see you soon with yet another exciting video. Take care. Goodbye.